Yeah, a lot of Sixers talk, mostly for the bad stuff, but we actually have something good to talk about, and it is Jared McCain against the red hot. It doesn't get any hotter than the Cavs, who they're shining on offense. I believe they're third on offense, but their defense is still pretty good overall. But man, Jared McCain took it to him: 34 points, 10 assists on 12 potentials. He's been driving. He's been driving really great. He drives left. He drives right. He shoots over all sorts of coverages. He drove past all sorts of people. Put Isaac Okoro in fits. The relocation threes I thought were really cool. Just full on display of one of the best games for a player who just started his career less than a month ago that honestly I've ever seen. It was such a game. What do you think about Jared McCain last night?
Yeah, I mean, it was really impressive, and it's happened pretty quickly with McCain. He was struggling to kind of carve out a role. We saw a good preseason from him, but struggling to carve out a role early in the season as Nick Nurse was wading through a group of veteran guards: Kyle Lowry, Eric Gordon, even like Ricky Council, who had a good start to or a good finish to last season, like was getting some opportunities early. And so McCain has kind of been shot out of cannon since. I wanted to give credit to Jared Dubin, who's got a great Substack that you can read, Last Night in Basketball. But he shouted out this stat in a Substack. That brings me to Sixers rookie. I'm just quoting Jared's work here. That brings me to Sixers rookie Jared McCain, who last night against the Cavaliers dropped 34 points and dished out 10 assists, went 6 of 13 from deep, and had 2 rebounds and 2 steals. What's the significance of this? Well, after last night, there were only the only rookies to go for 30 plus points, 10 assists, and make 5 threes ever. Trae Young did it 4 times. Steph Curry did it 3 times. Jason Kidd, Damon Stoudemire, Allen Iverson, Jamal Tinsley, Andrew Nembhard, and now Jared McCain. I'm sure this list is going to get filled with some other names now that the league is taking more threes. But 30 and 10 is really difficult to do as a rookie. 30 and 10 with that kind of 3-point shooting, very difficult. He did it against, again, as you mentioned, the undefeated best team in the league. He did it without Paul George, without Tyrese Maxey, without Joel Embiid, all the defensive attention kind of on him, and was able to have this level of success. And his confidence on the court really shines through. I mean, we saw this in the first game against the Knicks in the Emirates Cup with Joel Embiid's return. He was willing to just like fire as soon as he got set off screens. And he basically said, like, he was asked, what's it like playing with Joel Embiid? And he's like, it's easy. You set a screen, you get him the ball, and then he gets doubled and he hits out and you shoot it. Like, you just shoot it when you're open. And that mentality is going to go a long way. And I've been really impressed with not only his shooting, but his off the dribble game, his ability to get to spots where he wants to go. And then last night, the passing was really impressive. Again, 10 plus assists, did run hot in terms of converting potentials, but still like setting up teammates in a really great way. This looks like in what a draft that was classified as mostly a draft that might not have as much upside or might not have as much reliability and predictability. I did not think we'd have games like this. We've had one from Risache now. I didn't think we'd have too many games like this from this rookie class this year. And so Jared McCain really burst onto the scene in a big way last night.
Yeah, I think that the next question is like, what happens when Paul George comes back and what happens when Embiid comes back? And I think the most important thing for me was, as I mentioned, the relocation threes, the spot up shooting's been really good. That's going to track. Like, you don't need, with Maxey coming back, you don't need a pick and roll heavy guy. And you're not going to get that many minutes of non-Maxey anyways. So A, you got to play out the ball. B, you got to play defense. We'll talk about that in a second when we talk lineups. But his ability to play as an off-ball player, which was really the whole reason why the Sixers drafted him, I think could kind of keep it going here. The 2 games in a row now, he's had just really killer spot up plays. I think that could be something that buoys his minutes and keeps him playing for sure the non-Maxis. Probably a little bit of overlap. Maybe he kind of squeaks in there and fills in like the non-Paul Georges and the non-Maxis. Yep. So yeah, I guess we could kind of I kind of want to talk about the lineup thing. I think that's what most people care about most. So last night, Nick Nurse was asked, what do you think about Jared McCain starting now? He said that he's a, quote, candidate to start. And then I think that's with everyone, with Maxey, George, and Embiid. But so tomorrow they play, I forget, but he dogged Lowry. He's like, oh, we've been playing Lowry too many minutes. We didn't expect to play him this many minutes. I feel very, very confident that he's going to start tomorrow. Let me see who they're playing really quick. Against the Magic. So really tough matchup for him there. So how do you see this shaking out in the short term? She mentioned Tyrese Maxey not expected to play in this road trip. Again, are you as confident as I am that he's starting on Friday? And then what about starting going forward?
Well, I think there's kind of 2 impacts here, 2 timelines, if you will. don't sue me, Warriors, for any copyright infringement there. But the immediate timeline and the time without Tyrese Maxey, I think he's very likely to start tomorrow. I think he's very likely to assume essentially Tyrese Maxey's role in the absence of Tyrese Maxey. Will it be the same role that we saw at the beginning of the season without Paul George and without Joel Embiid? No, it's not going to be that kind of usage role. It will be in the games that Paul George and Joel Embiid are unable to play. But I think it'll be kind of similar to the role we expected Tyrese Maxey coming into the season with a healthy Paul George and a Joel Embiid. So what does this mean for them in terms of the intermediate and in terms of the long term? On the intermediate side, the concerns that we had about this team was, okay, Maxey is the durable guy. He's hurt now. Paul George and Joel Embiid are not so durable. And we came into the season thinking, well, Maxey's your stable, reliable, durable guy. And then maybe you rotate games with Joel Embiid and Paul George. And that's how you navigate your way through this regular season. And you keep your seeding in decent perspective. But then Maxey goes down. And then Paul George goes down. And then you're like, oh no, there's not enough here to hold it up. They're playing like the worst team in the league. Well, there might be enough to hold it up in an Eastern Conference that you don't need a lot to really hold things up during the course of the year. But this is another piece that you can rely on offensively, it looks like, to potentially kind of keep things afloat in the games without Joel Embiid that he's going to be managed, in the games without Paul George that he's going to be managed, or injuries come up. And so now you've got 4 guys potentially that can anchor an offense. That's a big difference in terms of just getting through the regular season. That gives you more leeway potentially to focus on keeping Embiid healthy throughout the regular season. Embiid flirting with the idea of, hey, maybe I will play in back-to-backs after they lose to New York. I don't think those two things are unrelated in terms of him thinking about that idea after a loss to New York and looking in the standings and going, gosh, we're like falling way behind here. I think Embiid is feeling some pressure to maybe be able to stay on the floor. This is the same pressure that is unfortunately led to him wearing down his body in the past, whether it's personal accolades with the MVP or seasonal team level accolades in terms of chasing seeding and stuff. So I think this relieves a lot of pressure. I think a hit on Jared McCain relieves so much pressure from this franchise in a year that the East is down, that they can be able to kind of maintain. And then long term, when we look at what does he mean in terms of long term, in terms of championship level aspirations that the Philadelphia 76ers have, hitting on a pick like this, which again, we're deciding that this is a hit, like with 2 or 3 games of evidence. I'm pretty confident because you just don't see games like that we're right, that this is a hit. Yeah. But it's a small sample to go on. But hitting on a pick like that, we've looked at what Denver's gone through, right? And the struggles that they've kind of had in terms of filling out the rest of the roster and the pieces that they've lost to free agency. This hitting on this pick sustains things and gives you that extra ceiling. And so I don't think McCain, like in the long term, I don't think he's a starter next to these guys because I think there's big time defensive concerns and he just doesn't add enough offensively. When you already have Embiid, Paul George, and Maxey, you don't need more offense. You just need defense. But I think he can be the 6th man that, as you alluded to, is they have 2 of these guys on the floor at all times now. Mm-hmm. And that's a big difference in terms of offensive creation. And it also allows these guys who were just supposed to be defenders to just be defenders. They don't have to worry about kind of doing the other thing. So Oubre, Caleb Martin, it's like just hone in on the defensive side. We'll figure out the offense around you here, and you're just going to have to knock down open looks. So adding this 4th potential offensive anchor piece is a huge game changer for Philadelphia, both in terms of the timeline of the regular season and trying to hold up and get through the regular season, but also in terms of the elevated ceiling in the playoffs.
Yeah, and just to go back to Nick Nurse has been talking about how they've got to be able to drive and kick more to create more 3-point open looks. He had 20 drives last night. That's more than Maxey. When Maxey plays more minutes, that was huge. And he shot more. He only passed out of drives 5 times, which is a pretty low rate. But they need that really bad. So the next question, you talked about Embiid resting. What about Paul George resting? That was another commentary about him not playing back-to-backs. Is there enough defensively to? And they're not. I don't think they want Paul George to defend anyways. Is that an okay lineup for you? The kind of non-defense Maxey, McCain, Oubre, Caleb Martin, is that enough defense for you with Embiid back there, or if whoever's back there?
I think with Embiid back there, if you have Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre, that's enough defense. Kelly, that trifecta of pieces is enough defense. It's better with Paul George as your 4th piece there. That's better. But I think with Embiid, that's enough. Embiid is an elite defensive player. And he didn't look great in his first game against New York. I thought a lot of the stuff he didn't look great at was conditioning related. I think he just looked gassed and just like he was asking out at different points.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of
Staying in the
getting blown
corner.
by in transition. Like he was just kind of standing in the corner offensively. I think that's mostly conditioning related. When he's fully healthy and conditioned, I think he's one of the best defensive players in the league. So I think that's enough with those two guys in the non Paul George situations. I don't think you need to take one of Oubre or Caleb Martin off for McCain when you have Paul George.
Yeah.
I think that's compromising a little bit too much defensively. You're going to get lineups like that at times for sure. And when you're playing catch up late in games and different things like that, I could see those lineups trying to work. But ultimately, like as glowing as we're going to be about Jared McCain's offense,
Mm-hmm.
the defense is probably equally as bad as the offense is good right now. I mean, it's really, really bad. So, and I don't like he's not super long. He's got a really like solid kind of built base, like a Kyle Lowry style base that he can probably handle strength well, but he's not like super quick and he's not really long. So I think the defense is going to be a problem long term. I think the hope is you can get him to being like a good team level defender and then like maybe things will be okay. But that takes rookies time, man. It's a lot to learn. And so I don't expect him to be good right now, but I think long term, the defense is certainly like a question mark for sure.
Yeah, he's getting picked on. Nick Nurse said really the first time he had big minutes, he was like, yeah, we saw him getting picked on. We know it's coming. It's going to happen every game. That's why he didn't go as high. If he would have been average, he would have went probably like third or fourth, maybe first.
He reminds me of like Lou Williams right now, where like, and I think he's got more sustainability to his offensive game and more variety to his offensive game because I think he's a better shooter. He squares his body really well on shots. Lou was like a guy who just destroyed second units offensively because of his like craftiness and different things like that. But in terms of like offensive skill set relative to defensive skill set, that's the type of player that he reminds me of with a higher offensive ceiling because I think the 3-point shot is a little bit better, but the defense is really, really troubling.
Yeah, and then not being able to stay in front, especially without Embiid back there. The Sixers are dead last in points per possession at the rim on defense. They are getting murdered inside. That's been a big thing for Drummond. He's been so bad down there that like he's losing a lot of minutes to Gerson.
Yep.
Anything else? Or the last thing I want to talk about is like where he stacks up for Rookie of the Year. But anything else you want to hit on for McCain to kind of wrap this? And then again, like what would you set the probability of him starting and just them? So basically, starting for Oubre, I think they need.
I think very low, very low.
Yeah.
I think very, very low. I would say sub 10%. Yeah. I think Nick Nurse really appreciates what Kelly Oubre's length, and I think Nick Nurse likes the challenge of trying to turn a guy into a defender, right? Like I think he likes trying to turn someone's mentality, and I think he's had success with Kelly Oubre on that front largely. Because Kelly Oubre was a guy that before coming to Philadelphia, he was not considered like a primary defender, and he did pretty well in that role in the playoffs last year against Jalen Brunson. So I think that's very, very low probability. I've obviously said, I'm here very optimistic on what this means for the Philadelphia 76ers future. I wanted to get your thoughts on that in terms of like, do you think this moves the needle in terms of where you're thinking of them in terms of championship level odds, different things like that? Like, how are you thinking of Jared McCain, both like in the immediate term for this Philadelphia 76ers edition and then in the longer term for roster building?
I think that I think they're more likely to get in the play-in, I guess, and be maybe in the top half. I don't know. I still think they're play-in bound. I just don't think I don't trust Embiid to stay on the court long enough. I don't trust Paul George to stay on the court long enough. So I think it's going to be hard. I mean, they dug themselves a hole. I know it doesn't seem that big, but the way they're losing these games.
Yeah, it's three games.
Yeah.
It's 3 games in the standings. That's the issue is right now in the Eastern Conference, if you are 5 and 6, you are the 4th seed. So it's just like it's not a big mountain to climb. That's the big thing.
But then at the same time, like look what they played though. Like Milwaukee, Toronto, Indiana was their win. Detroit, Memphis, Phoenix, Clippers, Lakers, Hornets. Okay, so it's a little bit better than I thought. It was softer earlier. I don't know. I think
earlier. I mean, and they have a lot of road games coming up too, so it's not like the schedule loosens up for them.
Yeah, but like Orlando's, I think safe. I think they've done enough to weather the storm. Obviously, the Knicks, I think the Pacers have made themselves look safe. So like I think they're stealing 6 at this point, unless something magical
Oh,
happens with Embiid.
I think it's too early to tell on that
Yeah, I
front.
don't
But
know. I'm kind of buying what the Pacers are doing. I'm buying what the Magic are doing. So I don't know. I think they got a little bit of bigger uphill climb, and they still got to fend off the Bucks, who have been terrible, starting to play a little bit better now. I don't know. I think
who
it's like a
would you
flip if they're in the top 6.
okay, who would you take them? Who would you not take them over? Who would you take against them? Is the easiest way to say that in a playoff series right now. Like you'd bet
They were
on the other
100%
side
good
if
to
you had
go.
even odds. Yeah, everyone's healthy.
I mean, who? So I would take Boston, Cleveland. Then we're talking. Yeah, that's the only guys I would say feel good about. It'd be close on the Knicks, which we'll talk about. Do
Yeah,
you feel differently?
I want to see more from Cleveland still from a playoff
Oh,
perspective.
really?
But I think it's Boston is clear.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the next tier is Knicks, Cleveland, Philadelphia. I don't feel clearly about anyone in that tier right now. It sounds like you have Boston tier, Cleveland tier, then a tier.
Yeah.
Is that how you're thinking about it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's close. We've got to see McCain do this over the course of the season. It's only been a couple games. We've seen this happen from time to time. So the second part of your question, yeah, man, this is huge. Not ideal. Like I think if they could pick their bucket, they would definitely prefer another wing since they already have Maxey, and Maxey's not a good defender. But hey, you take what you can get. You can never have too much ball handling. We talk about this all the time with diversity of offense in playoff series. So yeah, I think it definitely helps their potential. Obviously, we talk about this all the time. When you have 3 stars, you need to fill out the back end of your roster. What better way than doing that with drafting a really, really good rookie? So yeah, it certainly helps them. It makes them less likely to tank now. I think if things go poorly with Embiid, maybe they try to weather the storm and like, okay, hang in there and then get in there. So, but yeah, would be huge. They just have a lot of they have so much money tied up into offense, which again isn't how to build a team. I think, but hey, you take what you get.
Yeah, the other part of it is right, like, and obviously the mechanics of the CBA make it difficult, but this is another trade asset, right? In terms of like, and the mechanics just make it difficult with their roster build because it's like, how do you take more salary in, right? You can't. So maybe it doesn't matter from that perspective. Maybe it eventually, this is like long ways away, but maybe eventually McCain is so good that he makes Maxey expendable, and then you can turn Maxey into something that like balances the roster a little bit more from a fit perspective. That's a way ahead of ourselves in terms of thinking about anything on that front. But in terms of roster building, just having another chip makes things just a lot easier. So I think Daryl and the front office really hit on McCain in a big way, and I'm really optimistic on him. So let's get to the rookie of the year stuff, because he soared to the top of the odds at rookie of the year last night, which is an indictment on this rookie class, right? It's like one game a dude puts up 30 and 10 and we're like, yep, you're the fave now. One game. So what are your thoughts on McCain's rookie of the year campaign?
I think it's pretty crappy. Like he needs Paul George and Embiid to miss a ton of time to have the output and to have the minutes to play. So I think he's a terrible bet at 3-1 at whatever people got him last night, maybe 12-1, 15-1, 20-1. We're talking, but anything under, or I should say over, if you need to get at least 12-1 to be fair to me. I just think it's as bad as this rookie class is. There's still cases we could talk about that in a little bit, but it sounds like you feel similar to me.
I do feel similarly. Who do you feel should be the favorite right now?
Good question. I think Ricochet.
I agree.
Yeah, he's 450-1, which still doesn't seem fair.
Plus 450, not 450-1 would be incredible.
All right, well, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, that would be very fair. Yeah, plus 450. Excuse me. So 4.5-1. That's still not good price. I'm trying. Like, there's no good prices on guys.
I think the prices are tough this early right now in a market that carries a lot of hold. But I agree that he should be the favorite. I think there's a couple things working in his favor. One, he's shown competence and effectiveness, both offensively and defensively. I think his team is going to keep trying throughout the season while highlighting him as a key player on this team. This DeAndre Hunter knee stuff seems like it's a long-term thing that we're going to have to deal with throughout the season. So I think the path to playing time is very, very clear.
Yep.
And with the path to playing time very clear in a Quinn Snyder offense, there's going to be a lot of volume of possessions to be able to pile up counting stats. So from a counting stat perspective, I kind of think he'll end up somewhat similar to somebody like Alex Sarr or Bub Carrington or some of these other guys who might on bad teams pile up stats. And if his counting stats are somewhat similar and their team is better and he's considered a better defender than most of these guys, I think he's probably got to be the favorite. Is the way that I'm kind of thinking through things.
Yeah. Do you think not 450 to 1? Do you think plus 450 is fair, or what would you want to take if you did want to take a shot, like 8 to 1, 7 to 1?
I think 6 is the number that I'd feel I'm starting to get value on. So that's saying that, right? So 5 to 1 I think is probably around fair. Five, yeah. So about 20% chance of winning. I think that feels about right to me. It's so early in the season. That's the other thing we have to remember is like we are 1/8 of the way through the season, like 12% of the way through the season, essentially. So there's so many things that can happen. Injuries can happen. A player can emerge. So like 20% at this point feels like that should be the favorite. That's about as high as the favorite should be. I don't think we're like these McCain prices of like 30% or 25% or 35%. Like I think that's way too confident in a very, very small sample of games.
Yeah, we just talk about who's live. So McCain's live, Ricochet's live, Zach Edey, he's 5 to 1. That's a terrible price.
I don't think he's live.
You don't think he's live? You think he's dead?
I don't think he's live. I thought he was a really good bet on opening night. So
what would you want? What would you if you did want to take him? You need what? You need like 25 to 1.
I'd need like 20.
Yeah,
so it's
I kind of
like 18, 20. So I think I don't think he's super live because I think we've had all the scenarios work in his favor so far with John Morant down, Desmond Bane down, Jaren Jackson has been, he's been healthier of late, but started the season down. And we're getting like, I think he's averaging like 10 and 7 or something like that. It's just not, I don't think that's enough. Yeah. And when Ja and Bane get healthy, I don't see it.
Yep.
I thought it was a good bet, like on draft night. I thought it made sense, but I think he has not, and he looked great in the preseason, but he has not elevated to that level that I think he's going to play enough minutes to pile up the stats.
Yep. Bub Carrington's live. He's currently 6 to 1. Yeah. Is that good to you? I think I'd want 9 to 1.
I don't think any of the prices currently are good on players that I think are live, but I think he should be more like 10 or 12 to 1.
Yep. Alex Sarr's live, playing like crap, but Dalton Connect 18 to 1. I don't think he's live. He needs his injury. Played his great game. Played his best game last night.
I don't think he's live because I think the class is going to be a little bit stronger. In a very weak class, there's a chance. I think the good case for Dalton Connect is the fact that D'Angelo Russell's already kind of in the doghouse. So D'Angelo Russell, like that's the path for Connect's minutes to get to a point that are useful. But yeah, I think you would probably need an injury to AD or LeBron that would open up more usage and more of him like getting some sort of narrative around elevating the team. I think he'd need a positive narrative in his favor as well, which I don't think he's going to have.
And shame on me for not laddering up Dalton Connect, Memphis giving up the most catch and shoot points in the NBA. what am I doing? Let's finish it. Stephen Castle live, yes. Not that live though. When Sohan comes back,
I think it's
18 to 1.
I don't know how live he is. I mean, I think like we're in the ED territory with Castle, which I think the price is closer to fair on Castle, but still a little bit overpriced to me.
Jalen Wells, no. Donovan Clingan do enough for you last night? 25 to 1.
So it's interesting because he has he should be priced, in my opinion, similarly to Edey. That's more an indictment on Edey's price than it is Clingan's price. But Clingan is a monster defensively and super impactful. The hurdle to playing time is a big concern because they've got a big commitment to DeAndre Ayton. So I don't know if we're going to get the playing time that's going to allow him to pile up the stats if DeAndre Ayton was traded or that way was paved and cleared, I'm interested. I mean,
Yeah,
he is so good defensively,
man,
and he's
that stuff
so
on
big.
Nas Reed. Oh my god,
Yeah,
so good.
he's so big. I mean, he in some ways he reminds me of like Yao in terms of how big he is out there. Like it's just like he looks so much big. He made Rudy Gobert look so small last
Mm-hmm.
night. And so he's the most intriguing price that you've said to me. But with DeAndre Ayton there, it's just really hard to see
Yeah.
how the minutes are enough. And they said that he's got like an 18 to 24-minute limit. They're going to try to play him more, different things like that. He fouls so much. Like it's just so hard to see him playing. Like to see him playing 24 minutes a night. I think if you told me he played 24 minutes a night, I'd bet on him right now. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel good about the minutes getting there.
Yeah, he needs Ayton to miss time. He needs Time Lord to get traded. Time Lord's been
Yeah.
freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Time Lord, like every like per minute stat, he's freaking ridiculous. But
Yeah.
obviously, he hasn't played a lot of minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and should note, like he was so tired, like he was playing so good, and they had to like pull him out for a couple minutes just to
Yeah. He
let
was
him catch his
gassed.
breath. Yeah.
Well, he also got knocked in the balls, and so he lost his breath a little bit there too.
Only other player I think's live. He's 50-1. His teams might tank. Yves Missi, 50-1. Does that do anything for you? 50-1. When his coach already said he wants to play in the mid-20s, he doesn't have the profile. I don't think he's going to pop up. You're just betting against everyone. But at 50-1, like I kind of like it.
I think it should be more like 60 or 75-1.
Oh,
but yeah,
you're nitpicking though.
Well, look, man, these awards boards are just filled with hold and like are generally bad bets, and so like I don't have a price that I really like on any of these guys. But yeah, I understand the path. And he has been better of late for sure.
Yeah, he's hanging 45-1 on Caesar. I might throw a little bit at that. Just bet just a little something. I did take a big position on 6-man, which I guess I can say now. I bet Amen Thompson 65-1 6-man. Feeling pretty good about the Rockets. We'll talk about that another day. Okay, let's talk about the Wolves first because we just talked about Klingon. Let's make a transition there after he dominated there. Offensive issues, turnovers, not getting to the line. Just didn't have any energy again. Chris Finch has already talked about having structure to their offense again, which he always does when they struggle. What are we seeing from this team? How much do they miss Karl-Anthony Towns? They're shooting a ton of threes. They're not making a ton of threes, but what are you seeing from this team without Karl-Anthony Towns, with Dante DiVincenzo, with Julius Randle?
Yeah, I think we're seeing... And look, there's going to be growing pains with teams that haven't had a chance to practice a lot together, haven't had a chance to... Like Julius Randle's trying to integrate himself, and Anthony Edwards' position on teammates from a leadership perspective, I think has been a really effective one over the years, which is I'm going to let you be you. Don't worry about me. I'll fit in around you type thing. And like trying to platform guys and give them the opportunity to be themselves. I think that's really great as a young leader. I think unfortunately, the way that the offense is working right now, it feels a little bit like your turn, my turn. And there doesn't feel like there's a lot of flow involved in the offense. And then on top of that, because Anthony Edwards has become so in love with the 3-point shot, they can get into runs. Like we've talked about this before with Boston in past years when they were so like 3-point dependent. You could see these big runs in games and out of games with them, where they could win. They could run off like a 20-2 run, but then they could get a 20-2 run against them because of the 3-point shooting variance. I think Minnesota is participating in that a little bit more. I think their defense is struggling a little bit more because of transition, because of the long rebounds and threes missed. And so it just looks a little disjointed right now. I'm still fairly confident that they'll be able to figure things out. But the other big concern for me right now is like, when they made this trade, we were all thinking, well, the thing that should be able to sustain them now is this incredible depth. But we're out here playing 8-man rotations when you're supposed to have this incredible depth. We're not seeing Rob Dillingham. We're not seeing Josh Minot, who had a really good offseason and preseason. We're not seeing Joe Ingles. We're not seeing Terrence Shannon. We're just seeing like an 8-man rotation, and guys look a little bit tired and fatigued at the end of games. And I have a lot of respect for Chris Finch. I think he's a really good head coach, but I think right now there's just a lot of pieces that don't look right to me. Like the offense looks stagnant, the team looks tired defensively and like not communicating really well. And Julius Randle has his issues defensively in terms of falling asleep off ball and different things that are happening. Um, and they just don't look like they're playing with confidence in each other, which is a different thing than I think what we saw at the end of the season last year with the Wolves. Is they were a team that was really confident in one another. They kind of trusted each other to be in the right spots all the time. And I think right now they're still trying to figure each other out, and it hasn't looked good.
Yeah, it's been like, again, they're third in 3-point frequency, and they were shooting it great. And when they had that little run, they were winning 5 and 6 or whatever. They were making all their threes. Now they're not. Anthony Edwards has gone cold from 3. They're playing the math game when, like, I don't know why they should be. Like they've got, like, I thought their last plan worked last year, where they're putting pressure on the rim, adding a little bit more pick and roll stuff. Mike Conley's age has really affected them. But to your point, we see Karl Anthony Towns is second in catch and shoot efficiency. Dante DiVincenzo is like second worst among guys with top 45 in volume. So that's a concern. Julius Randle doesn't really shoot the 3 that well overall. I don't know. They're playing, like, they're just counting on Anthony Edwards to do so much, and he's not doing it in a way that's sustainable every night. Like, you're going to have bad shooting nights, and like your night hinging on Anthony Edwards shooting the ball well. It's a thin bet to make for a team that was so good in so many areas last year. I feel like they're making a bet when they shouldn't there. But yeah, with Mike Conley aging, and then should note too, Nickeil Alexander-Walker's been so good, and to have so many iffy games when Nickeil's playing so well is tough. The other thing too, the Cat with Naz Reid front court defense was like bad, especially in the playoffs. The Randall Reid looks real bad. Naz is your 5 is not good. That's a problem. That's probably the biggest problem. Like the non-Gobert minutes with those two out there, they're getting punished inside. There's nothing they can do about it, honestly. They just got to try to outscore you. We saw Naz pop off 2 games ago. Anything you want to add there?
I just wanted to add that the way that they're playing is like they have such a big investment in Rudy Gobert. And this is where a lot of people will complain about like Rudy Gobert not being as impactful in advanced metrics, like overstating his value and him being overpaid and all these different things. It's the fact that like you kind of have to play a specific way to emphasize for Gobert to, deliver his value. When you play that way, he's very, very valuable. But when you don't play that way, you really like the idea of right now that they're just going to bomb a bunch of threes, not put any rim pressure on. When you put rim pressure on, Rudy Gobert's offense opens up because his offense is going to be around the basket offensive rebounds. It's not going to be long offensive rebounds and like tip outs and like getting an offensive rebound like 8 feet away from the basket and reposting. It's going to be on putbacks. It's going to be on lobs. It's going to be on things where you're touching paint, where you are getting the ball into the paint on the dribble. And because they're not doing that, because they're just looking for threes and hunting threes, and Anthony Edwards is the main guy to put pressure on the rim in that way and isn't doing that, they're kind of taking Gobert out offensively. And then on the defensive end, when you're giving up long rebounds, you're less likely to be able to get set defensively. And so you're just nullifying all of Rudy Gobert's talents with the way that they're trying to play. And we've seen a couple of games that Rudy Gobert's gotten like taken out of the game and just like not been in, and it's gone really badly for them, as you've alluded to with these Naz Reid, Julius Randle front court minutes. So I think they really need to figure out a way to, I think having the weapon and the tool in the tool bag for Anthony Edwards to shoot threes and shoot threes effectively is valuable. But I think he needs to figure out the right mix of this. And I really think that should be more of a focus when Gobert is off the floor. When Gobert is on the floor, I think they really need to focus on getting to the paint and because he can be valuable offensively if you're doing that. But otherwise, it's not so valuable. And I think all of this is a learning curve of like learning the pieces. It's early in the season, but it's not encouraging right now.
Yeah, and just some stats behind this. 28 lineup 2-man combos with 40-plus minutes. As you would expect, dead last defensive rating, Julius Randle, Naz Reid. They have a lot of Nickeil Alexander-Walker in those 2-mans.
Yeah. So
flip that. The best defensive 2-man, Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Rudy Gobert. 92 defensive rating in 166 minutes. The next question is like, does Nickeil start? And that's something I think they should do. But that makes
Yeah,
the defense even worse, and you're leaning into offense and structure though. So I don't know. Do you have any
that's
thoughts on
yeah,
that?
that's the problem that they've had, and this is where we talked about in the postseason last year the importance of Mike Conley when he missed that game against Denver. The long-term challenges that Minnesota had in their offensive dependence on Mike Conley's organization structure, and they needed kind of another adult in the room. And right now, Anthony Edwards has not stepped up in that way. He's obviously like super talented, but he's not creating structure in offense as a take turns offense right now. And so when you get into these take turns offense situations, a lot of times guys don't get back defensively because they're just like the role players are like, well, what am I even doing here? I'm not touching the ball ever. So I just think I think they need to figure out a way. I think Anthony Edwards needs to figure out a way to put more pressure on the rim, get the ball moving around the perimeter by attacking the paint. And then I think everything kind of works and they can play Nikhil in those lineups. But it's got to be Ant creating rim pressure. Like if it's not, then I'm not super optimistic on the offense. And then if you move Nah to the starting lineup, what is even the purpose of Mike Conley at this point? Like in the second unit with like Nas and if you are overlapping with Julius, like Nas Julius Conley is going to be a disaster defensively.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's tough. I think they should be starting Conley and playing kind of limited minutes, but I think Conley needs to be out there more with Ant because I think Conley as a spot up shooter needs somebody to be able to create for him. Mm-hmm. Maybe he can be out there more with like Julius and Gobert. Maybe those combinations will work a little bit better. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's a little bit tricky right now because Nas out playing Conley. But then if you switch that, you don't really have a great place for Conley in the rest of the lineup. And I think energy and vibes, I think we need to see some more Dillingham or Minot, some young guys who will play really hard too.
Yeah. A couple more points. They're 18th in rim frequency on offense this year. Not great with the way that Randall can get to the rim a ton. So that number needs to come up. That's largely because they're just bombing from three. And then one last Nickeil Alexander-Walker point. Those two-man lineups I talked about, all five of the top net ratings, all five of them are Nickeil Alexander-Walker and a teammate. So he's just been so good. Yeah, so I don't know. He needs to just play more, and which I guess to close, Dante DiVincenzo has been pretty bad. The looks have been like okay. He's not getting like cleanness of looks there. Which we talked about this when the trade was made. Which Dante are they getting? Are they getting Knicks Dante or are they getting Warriors Dante? Right now they're getting Warriors Dante. Is that who they're going to get, or is this just kind of a slump, figuring out new teammates, all that stuff?
I mean, I would say that it's not even Knicks or Warriors. It's more like Knicks or Milwaukee. I mean, the Milwaukee Dante years, he shot 34% from three. There, he shot 30% so far in Minnesota. He's around 40% with Golden State and New York. And yeah, I think that's the big issue is like if he's not knocking down threes, he doesn't really bring like 90% of his value is in his shooting. The other 10%, the defense is adequate. It's not great. It's fine. He's active in passing lanes and he's like slightly above average, probably defensively overall. The creation and ball handling and secondary creation is like average, and he's a little bit turnover prone for a guy that doesn't, really run offense. And he's a fine rebounder. It's all tied up in the shooting. So if he's not making shots, he's not that valuable. And yeah, I think the looks have been good. I think he'll eventually make them, and I think he'll just get hot, and that'll change things. But right now, it's been bad.
Yeah, they haven't really had the like secondary shooting guy since Malik Beasley. Looking at some old stats back in 2022, taking 8 3-pointers a game when it was Ant coming up, D'Lo, Cat, and that group. So yeah, they need him to kind of get that volume up. He needs to like not be lapped by Ant. Like I think it was Ant's taking, I get the exact number. Ant's taking 11.4 per game. Dante's taking 7.1. So they got to get that over 8, and he's got to start making more. I mean, he's at 30.6% from three. That's a huge problem. But yeah, I mean, the amount of volume he had, he was like eighth all time for like 3-pointers made or something like that. When he was off the bench for like a good chunk of the year, it's completely crazy. So I don't know. Too early to evaluate. I've got concerns about their offense and defense. They need to figure out this Naz Reid thing. He was asked about that in one of his pressers, saying how they're still trying to figure out how each other plays, all that stuff, yada yada yada. So it's still pretty early. And we talk about this a lot when we do the betting stuff. The continuity is a really big factor. Anything there, and then could just hand it to you on the Knicks if you want to just flow into it.
I would just say, like, to sum up Minnesota, I'm my concerns are mostly that, hey, the advantage was supposed to be depth after this trade. We're seeing them have to play even tighter, so they're like leaning further away from what was supposed to be the advantage. And I'd like to see more opportunities for Dillingham and Minot. I'm not I'm not I'm not terrified of Minnesota's prospects going forward, but it's a discouraging start for sure. And I really think the tide will turn when, in some ways, when shots start falling, but also when Anthony Edwards just starts attacking the rim more. I think just we need, like, so much of their energy comes from some of the power that Anthony Edwards brings when attacking the rim. And I think some of their defensive intensity flares up when you get the kind of that emotions running through them as well. And so I just feel like this like ant kind of roaming around and, you know, trying to take advantage of guys going under on screens and just shooting is like not, I don't think it's their best selves. I think it's good to have the tool, but I think it's being a little bit overused right now.
Yeah, one last point. Just one more point. Their defense has been like mediocre, but one thing on their offense that's really hurt them the most, they're dead last in transition possessions. They are not running at all, and it's really, really hurting when their offense is bogged down and they're not hitting those 3-pointers. It really, really hurts them. Not getting transition is like such a bad way to look. Okay, Knicks, good and bad. Good. Their offense has been awesome on the season.
Yep.
Bad, there's a little bit, but let's start with the good. Let's talk about their third-ranked offense. Karl Anthony Towns, potential to go off every night. We talk about it on the DFS show all the time. What have you been seeing with the Cat Brunson two-man game and how this offense has put together overall?
I mean, it looks like we just had some weird like 3-year hiatus in Minnesota from Cat, because this looks like the continuation of the Cat that we saw in 2017 through 2020, when he was like a 26-12 guy playing in a even a tighter offensive era than what we have now in terms of floor spacing and shooting and whatnot. And so he looks like right back to that in his age 29 season right now. He's averaging 26 and a half and 12 with 2.7 assists per game. He's shooting 50% from three. The shot has been great. He stopped giving, like early in the season, we were complaining about a lot of post ups and trying to like post up, honestly, like post up from like 16 feet out is what he was trying to do, which is just like wildly inefficient. If you're going to try to post up, at least beat guys down the floor and try to post up from 8 feet. But he looks to have found his rhythm offensively in a way that I think is also, to his benefit. Is I think defenses came out of last year and we're like, we got to figure out ways to like put more pressure on Jalen Brunson than we put on him last year. And I think defenses are trying to scheme a little bit more towards Jalen Brunson. I think Cat's kind of making him pay for that. So I think early in the season, it's been really, really good offensively for Cat. He is playing with so much more space that he lost all that space with Rudy Gobert in Minnesota. And that's really allowing all levels of his game to shine. And he's an extremely gifted offensive player. I mean, in terms of like offensive centers that are more gifted than him, it's probably just Jokic and Embiid. I think he's more gifted offensively than Anthony Davis.
Yep.
He just strictly on that end of the floor, just incredibly gifted player. Mm-hmm. So we're getting to see all that shine, and it's great. And I think generally, if you're a Knicks fan, generally you would be like, if you tell me we have a great offense, I'll trust in Tibbs to figure out the other side of the ball.
Yeah, he's driving it almost 8 times a game, shooting 62% on drives. He's been really, really good. Overall half-court offense has been fantastic. Overall efficiency, he's second among top 45 players for points per possession. Number one, Kyrie. Kyrie's first.
Yeah, Kyrie's been amazing.
He's been freaking crushing. But yeah, I think their offense has been great. And their scheme's been – so their big thing with their scheme, and we saw this first night of the season, their pick-and-roll defense is a problem. Every night, we're talking about guards who can go off on them. That's been an issue. I think they're they're actually worst in pick-and-roll handle efficiency per possession. They're getting back, though. So they're making it a little bit tough. They're playing games on their terms, which is good. Yeah, I think they're actually, their last 7 or 8 games, they're first in keeping teams in the half court. So that's really, really good. They're playing the right way. Their offense is great. So I think it's a winning formula. So overall, I feel pretty good about this trade. We can talk about Mikal if we want. But anything else you want to add? We knew this, though. Like, this is maybe a confirmation bias, but we knew getting Karl Anthony Towns, putting him in a pick and pop heavy offense with Brunson was going to work. just a matter if he stays healthy. Can they find depth pieces? Because this 7-man rotation work? Can Deuce give him enough? Can OG, all these guys stay healthy? So far, it's mostly working here. So defense, and then do they have enough depth? I think that's like the big concern.
Defensively, the interesting thing is when you look, they have like 3 or 4 opponents that they've held below 100 points. So they've had these games where they've been really good defensively, and then they've had some games where, like last night against the Bulls, they gave up 124, they gave up 132 to Indiana, they gave up 121 to Atlanta. They've had some games where they've been like terrible defensively, and then some games where they've been really good. When they've been really good, it's been their ability to force turnovers. OG and Mikal Bridges kind of locking things down on the perimeter and not letting teams kind of get set into the flow of an offense because they're getting disrupted from kind of the main perimeter guys. And the challenge is that teams know that there's 2 weak spots on them defensively, which is Brunson and Cat, and you can orchestrate getting switches into getting those two in the pick and roll. And once you get those two into the pick and roll, that's where the Knicks have had a ton of problems. And so short term, it's frustrating. As somebody who bet on this team over 53.5 wins, I'm not feeling good about that. Bet on this team to lead the league in wins, not feeling good about that. When they made this trade, I didn't feel good about things because I thought they compromised their regular season win potential for the ceiling of the playoffs. And I think we're seeing that come about because the offensive ceiling is so much higher right now. But the defensive consistency we're not seeing. And I think part of that is new pieces, getting acclimated, not a lot of practice time early in the season because the schedule is so insanely condensed. I mean, they've played 7 games here in the first 13 days of November. So like every off day is just recovery. There's no time to practice. So I think as the schedule slows down a little bit, I think you'll see the Knicks defense start to kind of come into form, but they definitely need to find another depth piece. You can't be running 7-man rotations all through the regular season, 7.5, 8-man rotations. So hopefully Matt Ryan can be that short term for them, but hopefully they can get Dadier up to speed and eventually get Precious Achiuwa and Mitch Robinson healthy, and then things can like maybe take off. But there's some concerns there in terms of like Mitch Robinson's best self, right, is as a defensive anchor that maybe can cover up things for Cat, but then you remove all that floor spacing for Cat. Is he the same offensive player? You get into some of the same issues you had in Minnesota. So it's a different situation than the Knicks teams in the past where Mitchell Robinson's defense that anchored them in such a big way fit so well because they like offensively they were so reliant on Brunson. And so it'll be interesting to see when that fit. But like that's the ultimate ceiling that you want to see that test is when Mitchell Robinson's back healthy, does the defense like immediately get to above average? Because he's been that kind of needle mover defensively in the past. And if that's the case with this offense, like it's really encouraging. So slow start for the Knicks, really frustrating at the level of inconsistency. But I think some of that is just like new teammates trying to adapt to each other. And I think, when we're talking about the Cat trade of the Knicks offseason, I think we should feel fairly optimistic. The other trade, though, I think is the one that maybe we should be a little bit more concerned on because Mikal Bridges has not looked like the Mikal Bridges we thought we were going to get when they traded the farm for Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, going to that defensively, their last in half-court defense. And yeah, as I mentioned, the exact stat was they had the highest frequency against. 20.9% of opponents' possessions are pick and roll handler stuff. That's highest in the league. They're going at Mikal. They're not giving enough help. And then the stat that I shared with you when I was looking at matchups, the on-off stuff with Mikal is like comically bad. They're minus 32.1 in net rating with him on versus off, meaning they're 32 points worse with him on the court per 100 than with him on the court. That's really bad. Partly due.
He's playing 38 minutes a night, Mike. He's playing 38 minutes a night. So that 10 minutes without Mikal Bridges on the floor is going really well because that's a hard number to amass when you're playing 38 minutes a night.
Yeah. And it's their defense. It's all defense. I don't have it in front of me, but it's all the defensive stuff. Like they've been really bad when he's on the court defensively. I mentioned dead last in half court defense. Like you're worse than the Raptors. You're worse than the Hawks. You're worse than everybody in the league. So I don't know. Did they get? And then meanwhile, Cam Johnson's crushing on the other end. So just because Cam Johnson went to North Carolina and Mikal went. That's the only reason why they traded for him. Do you have any? So yeah, what are your thoughts on Mikal overall here?
It's just The shot thing got a lot of attention in the preseason. They came out and in the first few games he like shot the ball okay, and we are like, oh, okay, maybe it's just working through kinks
Mhm.
or whatever. But you look, and right now he's shooting 30% from three, and he's shooting 63% from the free throw line. He's a career 84% free throw shooter.
Yeah,
Um,
that shot, man.
this is like a little Markelle Fultz vibes
Hmm.
that I'm really starting to get pretty nervous about if I'm a long-term investor in the Knicks, which I am with these futures that I'm holding. Um, because like if he's not a shooter and the defense isn't going well when he's on the floor,
Hmm.
what what are we doing here?
Hmm.
We're just got a guy who's able to soak up minutes, which is great, but it's really concerning that the two things he was brought to do, they're not taking into effect when he's on the
Hmm.
court in any substantial way. Um, and the way that this shot has fallen off is so severe. Now it's only 11 games, so maybe it's just a blip. But the free throw percentage is not encouraging. It's a small sample on the free throw side of things because he's only taken 11, so he's 7 for 11. But he's not getting to the line at all. He's averaging one free throw attempt per game. There's a guy who last year with the Nets was around 4. The year before in the small sample with the Nets, he was at 6. So he's not getting to the free throw line. I don't think he has a lot of confidence in his shot. He's not trying to get to the free
Yeah.
throw line. He's not trying to drive the ball. And he looks timid late in games. Like his first half scoring versus second half scoring, there's been a big differential as well. That he's like, I think there's a real confidence issue with the shot right now that I hope gets corrected because if he's not a shooter, then that trade is going to really feel bad because the whole
Hmm.
point was that he's going to be a shooter and a defense guy, and the defense wanes over time. So if he's not a shooter, that's concerning.
Yeah, he's transitions have been bad. His open floor game is terrible. He's fifth worst in transition efficiency, and then as we mentioned, catch and shoot stuff. He's sixth worst among guys, basically with his volume. He's missing everything That's what you wanted. You want open floor game, you want on ball defense, and you want some catch and shoot stuff around that Brunson cat action. It's FFF. They got to get him right. I don't that was a big preseason story. That the weird shot hitch. Like, what are we doing here? You've got year in year out of being a good shooter. It was a weird look there. Any other Knicks notes? And I guess we could wrap up with how do you feel about where this team stacks up?
So I'm still optimistic on where they are long term. I'm really hoping that this is just a blip on the radar with McHale's shooting stuff and that we get
Mhm.
regression to the mean over time. And if we do, I think things will look a lot even better offensively, and they've already been pretty good. Um, but there's some concerns for sure. Like in terms of piling up regular season wins, it's going to be tougher to do when you're this thin
Mhm.
as a team and you're playing these guys this much. And if McHale is not the player that they traded for, the outlook is drastically different. It's just not
Mhm.
it's not championship level outlook if McHale's not the player that they traded for. It's winning a playoff series level outlook. And that's cool, but that's not what you went
Mhm.
all in on. So I would say that I am concerned about McHale. I am
Mhm.
concerned about the depth impacting their ability to rack up regular season wins for my own investment purposes. I'm not concerned about Cat. I'm not concerned about I think the defense will come around with more time and Tibbs. I just believe in Tibbs so much that I think the defense will
Mhm.
come around. Um, but the ceiling on the Knicks, I think we've seen it raised with the way that Cat can play offensively. I think
Mhm.
it needs to be championship level. I think we need McHale to play at
Yeah.
McHale's level. And I'm not saying the half season we saw in Brooklyn where he was outrageous after the trade. I'm saying just Phoenix level McHale. That's the level of McHale we need. Like that elite role player level of McHale. And if they have that, then I think they're championship level aspirations. But I think without
Yeah.
that, without McHale being that, I don't think they can be there.
Yep, for sure. OG's been everyone's been good. OG's been good. Josh Hart's been great. It's really just Mikel not clicking yet. Brunson's been fine.
He's been down.
Yeah,
It's been disappointing
yeah,
a little bit.
yeah, yep. He's coming around. Well, now he's hurt, so he's banged up.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right, that pretty much does it here. Anything else you want to add, or we can wrap up with the promos? We're
No,
running hot.
as always, appreciate those of you listening to us. We are back on this one time a week schedule while we get through the dog days of the NBA and NFL overlap season. We'll get back to 2 times a week later on in the year. But if you're interested in checking out any of the premium content, you can go to establishedrun.com/subscribe-MBA for more details on our premium product offerings. On the prop side, we're chugging along around that 15-16% ROI mark that we usually maintain early in the season. Feeling really good about the volume we're getting out, really good about the process that we use to bet props. Highly encourage if anybody's interested in that, reading the FAQ, because it's really hard to get the bets, and it's a process for sure. So it's not for everyone. That's why we make it a weekly subscription. If it doesn't work for you, that's cool. If you're interested in supporting us just on the free side of things and not on the premium side, that's cool too. We love talking basketball, and we love being able to do it and get to you guys for free. And the best way to support us there is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can go to Establish Run NBA on the YouTube side. We're also trying to build out other socials on Instagram as well. You can follow Establish Run NBA there. You can also make sure to like and subscribe. Like the videos on the podcast feed, and leave us comments and ratings and reviews on the podcast feed, like the videos on the YouTube feed, all that good stuff. We really appreciate the support for our free or our paid work. We love talking basketball, and we love the audience that we have. So appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we've added like over 22 units since in the last week, since November 6th. So we're cooking here. Let's keep it rolling. I appreciate all this, everyone who subscribes, and appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you guys next time.